First of all, it's a great honor for me to be here, to be one of the few students to kind of give you an idea of what he was like as a mentor. As you've heard from most of the speakers before me, he really had a passion for his mentorship, and he really cared about the education that he gave his students. And so it was a very great fortune in my life to have him as my teacher. And he became my friend over the years. And it's mainly because not only did he teach me chemistry and physics, which he was well adept at, but he taught me a lot about life and he did that mainly by example. Everything that he did came from the qualities of his character. He had, as you've heard, he was a very witty man, and he was a charming man. He was also irreverent and absolutely truthful, even to a fault at times, because as anyone who's married knows, you can't be truthful all the time. But Rick was, and I think that affected a lot in his research as well as his personal life. And it was a great pleasure just knowing him. He was this captivating, charismatic guy, and which is rare among scientists, because most scientists, I mean, if you talk to most scientists, and they're in this room, most of them lack basic social skills. It's true. But Rick really had it. He really had that ability to get people to listen to him. And it was mainly because he was charming, and he was also very attractive man, as you can see. And what you can't see in that is that he has these piercing blue eyes, and if you ever met him, he would just gaze at you, and he'd have to stare at you. No matter what he was saying, he'd have to sit there and look directly at you. And the first time I actually met him, I was a medical student, actually, over at I was doing research. I was leave of absence doing research in cardiology at UT, Health Science Center. And I had a dinner with him. We just started talking, and then the next thing I know, we were talking for 2 hours, and he went through this wonderful story because he was a grand storyteller. And that was the first exposure I had to this vision, this golden path for nanotechnology, and how it would affect energy and health and everything. And he also talked about his family. He loved to talk about Preston. He loved to talk about his entire life. He just loved to talk. And I think the wine also helped that night as well. But one of the things that I wanted to share with you, just a few memories so that you had a flavor of what he was like. He, in the group, he would always refer to himself as, well, with a few students, he would say, make Daddy happy. Daddy really needs to be happy. So he really looked at himself as like this father figure for most of us. And so, he'd say, Daddy, make Daddy happy, bring it home to Daddy, Daddy needs a hug. He was actually a very physical guy, which was nice. So one day after I joined his group, we were in his Cadillac. He had a big black Cadillac, and the group members, we actually renamed the car, which we never told him this. We renamed the car the Daddy-lac. And so we were in his Daddy-lac, and we were coming back from a meeting over at the Med Center because we were starting these amazing collaborations after I joined the group. And I was sitting there, and I remarked to him that, when we were in this meeting, he seemed to know a whole lot more than most of the physicians that we had just spoken to about disease and cancer in particular. We were talking to some cancer specialists. And so he started to share with me how he became so interested in nanohealth and nanomedicine, and it was because of this personal battle that he had had for so many years with cancer. And he fought that courageously, with incredible courage. And he would sit there and he would just tell me exactly what he thought about medicine and how he could change it. And this vision wasn't just a marketing scheme. He really believed in it. And not only did he believe in it, and not only did he have the vision to do it, he had the scientific plan to actually execute on it and to change the world as he wanted to do, 1 nanometer at a time. And so he wanted to fashion me, and as most mentors do, they want to fashion you in their own likeness. And so he wanted me to be this physical chemist, even though I had been a medical student, so I joined his group. And he told me that if I would join his group, that his research group would, shortly after me joining, would be transformed into half a biological research team exploring nanotechnology and nanoparticles. And he did that. And about 6 months before he passed on, he split half the lab into an energy lab and the other half being a nanohealth lab. And we've really made some incredible progress in that field. And actually, while he was in the hospital, we were doing some amazing work, which everyone will see at some point very shortly. It was amazing research that he actually conducted. And even while he was in the hospital room, he was directing research. We used to go over there, a lot of the students would go over there to have meetings with him. And here's a man fighting cancer. And he really sat there with each and every student when they would come in and then and just tell them exactly what he wanted to do. And he would direct, and then you would have to update him because he would check his email frequently. And he loved email. And then actually one night, that brings up another story. One night I was in his hospital room, and he couldn't get on the internet with his Windows machine. And so I'm pretty good with computers. And so he asked me to take a look, and I took a look at it and I fixed it. And what was surprising about this conversation was how much he seemed to care for me, and this was the first indication that he really demonstrated. He said to me after I had fixed his machine, he was so happy. He was on the internet, he was checking his email, he had like 500 emails in one day, it was crazy. And he was checking his email, and then he said to me, "Paul, you're a good man, we're going to have to get you a PhD." And then I said to him, trying to be as witty as he was, I said to him, from your lips to God's ears. And without blinking, he says, "If only it were that easy." And he's just like that. And then he followed up and said, "Because if it were that easy, I would." And he really then sat me down and said, "Let's talk about your career." This was only 2 weeks before he passed on. He had enough strength and he had enough compassion for my life and my education that he wanted to talk about this. And it's just an amazing thing that he would care so much about his students in such an intimate way, because teaching to him was a very intimate relationship. We were all a family, and it was an amazing time. And then one last story that I'd like to share with you, to just kind of give you an idea of what he was really like. When I was in the hospital room, just about a week before he passed on, I was leaving late at night because I would be over at the med center, and I would be doing research, and I'd go over to visit with him. And a nurse came in about an hour or so while we were having a conversation. She was going to take his vitals and take a look at him. So then I was leaving, and she struck up a conversation with him, and she said, "Mr. Smalley," which I had never heard. I never heard anybody call him Mr. Smalley. "Mr. Smalley, what do you do?" You know, and I was really surprised by that, and then so I started to leave because I thought this was going to get strange. And so as the door began to close, I hear him just look at her, and he just said, "I'm a teacher, and I teach chemistry and physics." And that's all he said to her. And then she said something like, "Well, I would never understand any of it, and I was never good at physics." And he said, "Neither was I." He was just that funny. I mean, he was this funny guy. He was an incredibly charming individual who really cared about each and every student, and it was a great fortune for all of us. And I think that what you'll see is that most of his students coming out of here, and who have already come out of here, are really on this mission that he inspired in all of us. And I hope that we can all live to that, and I certainly will try. Thank you.